Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a brand new, absolutely fascinating, and honestly highly consequential research paper from Anthropic. It's called 2028: Two Scenarios for Global AI Leadership. We're going to impartially unpack exactly what these researchers see as the current state of global AI competition, and we'll look at the two very different futures they believe our policy choices are creating for the year 2028. If you're looking for a clear, no-nonsense overview of this research, you're in the exact right place. So, let's dive straight in. The researchers frame our present day, the year 2026, as a really fragile tipping point. We're basically standing at a massive crossroads, and it prompts one absolutely vital question for global security. Who is actually going to control the rules of transformative artificial intelligence? According to Anthropic's analysis, AI is advancing so fast that our window to set the rules of the game is closing fast. The choices we make literally right now are going to determine if these incredibly powerful systems end up being governed by democratic values or authoritarian control.
And that really brings us to the core thesis of the entire paper. It's captured perfectly in this one thought. Democracies, not authoritarian regimes, must lead in AI development and deployment. The researchers argue that because transformative AI could enable automated repression at a totally unprecedented scale, it is absolutely imperative that democratically elected governments are the ones shaping the norms. They draw a hard contrast here with authoritarian regimes, like the Chinese Communist Party, arguing that if those regimes take the lead in AI, it poses a fundamental, structural threat to global security and human rights.
To explore this fork in the road, here is our roadmap. We've got 6 parts: the stakes of AI leadership, winning the compute war, loopholes and distillation attacks, Scenario 1, democracies lead, Scenario 2, authoritarian parity, and finally, securing the AI frontier.
Okay, Section 1, the stakes of AI leadership, automated repression versus democratic norms. Let's get into it.
So, the most crucial thing to understand here is that AI is a dual-use technology. The authors report that the CCP is already leveraging AI for domestic control, things like automating censorship and repressing dissidents. But military applications, those are just as alarming. The paper notes that China's military is actively procuring commercial AI, like the DeepSeek models, to do things like coordinate military drone swarms. Plus, the researchers warn that advanced AI is going to wildly compress the R&D cycles for critical technologies, meaning a new frontier model could drastically accelerate the creation of bioweapons in a matter of weeks rather than years. It's a staggering thought.
Moving right along to Section 2, winning the compute war, the hardware behind the intelligence.
If you only take away one single concept from this explainer today, make it this: compute. The paper defines compute as the highly advanced semiconductor chips and the massive data center infrastructure that you absolutely need to train and deploy frontier AI models. And the researchers make a really bold claim here. They say that having access to top-tier talent, or unlimited money, or just oceans of data, all of that is basically irrelevant if you don't have the underlying hardware. Compute is the bottleneck. It's the raw fuel of artificial intelligence.
And right now, the lead that democracies hold in this hardware race is just staggering. Thanks to decades of commercial innovation from giants like NVIDIA, plus bipartisan U.S. export controls, the gap is massive. To put that into perspective, the researchers cite a projection that in 2026, China's tech giant Huawei will produce a mere 4% of NVIDIA's aggregate compute. 4%! That is a massively commanding hardware advantage for the US and its allies. The researchers actually structure this whole global contest around 4 distinct fronts: intelligence, domestic adoption, global distribution, and resilience. And compute? It acts as the absolute essential fuel across every single one of them. You need compute to build the smartest models, to integrate AI into your economy, to provide AI infrastructure to the world, and to maintain political stability through all this economic change. To win on any of these 4 fronts, you've got to have the hardware.
But wait, if the compute gap is really that wide, how are foreign labs keeping up? Well, Section 3, loopholes and distillation attacks. Let's see how the gap is closing.
The researchers point to something called distillation attacks as a major, gaping backdoor. They define this as an illicit process where foreign labs systematically harvest and copy the innovations of U.S. frontier models. Basically, think of it like this. They create thousands of fake accounts, pump prompts into a leading American model, and then use those brilliant state-of-the-art answers to train their own models. It lets foreign competitors catch up at a fraction of the cost, completely free-riding on billions of dollars of U.S. foundational research.
And alongside that digital distillation, the paper points to some really severe physical loopholes in our export controls.
For example, federal prosecutors recently charged individuals with smuggling 2.5 billion, yes, billion with a B, dollars worth of servers containing advanced U.S. chips directly into China. And beyond straight-up smuggling, you have offshore access. Companies like Alibaba and ByteDance are training their models on restricted U.S. chips simply by renting access to them in offshore data centers in places like Southeast Asia, because current export laws cover the sale of the physical chips, but not necessarily renting remote cloud access to them. It's a huge loophole.
Which leads us to the divergence point. Section 4, Scenario 1, Democracies lead, locking in the advantage.
To really set the stage for what 2028 might look like, the paper points to a massive wake-up call that just happened, the April 2026 release of Anthropic's Mythos preview model. The researchers point out that this model autonomously fixed more security bugs for Firefox in a single month than Firefox had fixed in all of 2025. This timeline maps out the sheer acceleration we are dealing with. Mythos Preview proved that AI capability is scaling incredibly rapidly right now, hurtling us toward transformative, totally industry-reshaping AI by 2028.
So, in Anthropic's first scenario, policymakers successfully tighten those hardware controls and squash distillation attacks today. The result by 2028? Democracies secure a super comfortable 12 to 24-month lead in frontier model intelligence. Because of that undeniable lead, democracies actually get to set the global rules and norms for AI. Domestically, the U.S. is able to deploy robust, automated cyber defenses. And globally, that massive AI advantage acts as a huge deterrent against authoritarian aggression, making American AI the trusted backbone of the global economy. Sounds ideal, right?
But what if we don't fix the leaks? Section 5, Scenario 2, Authoritarian parity, the neck-and-neck race. If policymakers fail to act, the researchers warn of a really destabilizing neck-and-neck race by 2028. In Scenario 2, the CCP achieves near-frontier parity through all those distillation attacks and smuggled compute we just talked about. And because their models are suddenly good enough and highly subsidized by the state, cheap Huawei and Alibaba data centers end up dominating global markets, especially in the global south. The military then integrates these near-frontier systems into their cyber forces, multiplying threats against critical democratic infrastructure. No one has a commanding lead, and global security becomes deeply, deeply destabilized.
Furthermore, the paper argues this exact neck-and-neck parity creates a super dangerous race to the bottom that disincentivizes safety. I mean, if American labs feel they're losing ground, they might just rush their deployments. And the data here is wild. Independent assessments found that under common jailbreak techniques, U.S. reference models complied with malicious requests about 8% of the time. In stark contrast, a Chinese DeepSeek model complied with overtly malicious requests 94% of the time. 94%! In a neck-and-neck race, those are the types of potentially unsafe models that could absolutely flood the global market. So how do we prevent that? Section 6, Securing the AI Frontier, the Policy Blueprint.
To avoid that destabilizing parity, Anthropic outlines 3 really specific policy pillars. First, strictly close the hardware loopholes, ramp up enforcement to stop the chip smuggling, and restrict remote cloud access via foreign data centers. Second, aggressively defend U.S. models by treating distillation attacks as literal corporate espionage and improving threat sharing between the private labs and the government. And third, go on the offensive. Champion the export of trusted American AI infrastructure globally so that democratic systems become the default operating system for the entire world's economy.
Anthropic's paper makes it crystal clear. The tools for AI leadership currently rest in the hands of democracies, but that advantage is actively leaking out the back door. So we'll leave you to ponder this final provocative thought, based on their analysis. When 2028 finally arrives, which of these 2 futures will our choices today have built? Will it be a world secured by democratic norms, or a highly unstable race defined by authoritarian parity? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.